Welcome to AgriMinds, the podcast where we explore the intersections of personal growth and professional success in the ag industry. I'm Kacee, your host. Thank you for joining me as we dive in to the different strategies and insights that will help you level up your life and career. From mental health to leadership development, we're going to cover it all. So sit back and get ready to grow with AgriMinds. Welcome to another episode of the AgriMinds podcast. Today, I have a special guest, Christie Apple, also known as Crop Scout Christie. Her and I met several years ago when we both worked in the hemp space, and I learned so many cool things from Christie. And so I'm really excited to have her on the podcast. Christie, welcome.
Thank you for having me on, Kacee. I'm excited to visit with you today.
Me too. I've been following you for years, but when we finally met in person, the way that you conveyed the stuff that you're working on, the avenues that you're interested in, how you worked on yourself, I just found absolutely fascinating. And so today I just really want to dive into that. I want to hear your story. I want to hear how you invest in yourself, how you pour into other people, how you manage balancing several hats, and how you're involved in so many things. And so I'd love to just turn it over to you and have you kind of just share a little bit about yourself and your story.
Gosh, it has been a few years, Kacee. I love that it was hemp that brought us together. I have a penchant for hemp in my heart. I always will. I'm still very active in that space. In fact, and I know seasons of life for you have changed, and you're not nearly as in close contact with that industry anymore. But there's still really cool stuff happening there, and so we'll have to catch up on that on another day.
Part two.
Right, absolutely. And you know me, I love to nerd out on plant science and soil health, and so hemp plays a big role in that. But anyway, yeah, so I'm Christie Apple. I'm an agronomist in Central Michigan. I'm also a wife and a mom, and I have an awesome, little family here. We're empty nesters now, my husband and I. And I've been in the ag industry specifically for about 15 years. And what that looks like for me today is I kind of serve the agricultural space in two specific ways. One of those is through my Crop Scout Christie identity, right? So I have a social media presence, and I also do some consulting on the side. So what that looks like is specifically on hemp and cannabis and soil health. I kind of help farmers, sort out the nuts and bolts and organize things in a way that helps them take steps towards their goals. And sometimes that looks like helping to identify their goals for their soil health plans or their nutrient management plans, and then kind of walk them through as a companion on their journey to help them achieve their goals and to document progress along the way. So when a farmer is trying to, develop a cover crop plan, it's not as simple as just we're going to go plant some rye, or we're going to fly some rye on over top of our corn. There's all kinds of things that one decision leads to these other things being affected. And so I kind of take this more whiteboard approach when I'm visiting with the farmer about something like that, and kind of say, all right, so if this is what we want to do, we'll write this on our board. This is what we'd like to implement. Now let's talk about all the things that it affects and what are ways we can measure how it's affected, right? So those are just things that I do to help serve the ag community with my Crop Scout Christie identity. Also, on the social media side of things, I really have been having a great time building relationships with people all over the world in all kinds of different circles, tons of different cropping spaces, tons of different aspects and ancillary businesses to the ag industry. But basically just sharing, facts and tidbits from the field. As an agronomist, it's my job to help identify problems, help to sort out issues, like I said. Sometimes it's what I like to call agronomy CSI. I don't know if your listeners have ever watched CSI, but essentially, we kind of get the call that says, hey, my wheat is yellowing. And then we have to go to the scene of the crime, recreate, what actually happened here, find the culprit, make a recommendation on how to correct, rectify, or help that situation. So a lot of what I do, is in that kind of context there. When I come across those things, I find it fascinating because there's just so much to dive into. And I've also found that more often than not, farmers don't talk about those things. They don't talk amongst themselves. Not only that, but agronomists do not talk amongst themselves enough about things that they've identified and worked through and had success with. And for me, I feel like using my social media platform to be an open book about challenges, or even just why am I in a wheat field today? Why am I here? And what is the goal for me scouting this field today? And I find that when I share something, it immediately generates responses from not just farmers, but also agronomists saying, oh yeah, we saw that as well. We were wondering about that. I noticed that. I just recently did a post that, generated a huge amount of activity and conversations around application techniques, or like 5 or 6 different, conversations related to this one problem we saw in the field. And I just want to share that kind of stuff with folks, because why can't we have open conversations about successes and failures? We only ever talk about yield in ag, and we need to talk about all of it now. And so that's kind of what I've been doing with my Crop Scout Christie social media platforms. I really love doing that. I also have like this other role that I play with a corporation. They're an ag tech company, crop nutrients, called TMAC Agro. And within that organization, I support our agronomy technical sales reps in helping to be better agronomists. I help them to speak the language of soil health through product and nutrient recommendations. I help to support them in building their sales acumen. I've been in sales for a long, long time. And so, helping them to be better at all these different aspects. I work with a team of peers that we do this together. And specifically in the Great Lakes, where I'm located in Central Michigan, I work directly with ag retailers that are using our products as well. And so I serve as their technical support for other retailers that are utilizing our nitrogen stabilizers or other crop nutrients, whatever that may be. So I have this world that I have, I wear multiple hats, and one of those is with TMAC Agro, and one of those is with Crop Scout Christie. And then here I am in the middle as Christie Apple, wife, mom, and agronomist.
Wow. There's so much. I was taking notes as you were talking, because there were so many things. I'm like, oh, that's a golden nugget right there. Excuse me. I think that your life is fascinating. I absolutely do. I mean, and that just says so much about who you are and the intelligence that you bring to be able to utilize both sides of your brain and be able to shut one side off to, like you said, bring the relatability, build the relationships, have conversations that are sometimes emotional, because you're right. In agriculture, we tend to focus on the end result, not always the process. And that's something that I absolutely love. And I incorporated that into the AgriMinds program of, it's not always about the end result. It's about how are we planting the right seeds at the right time, in the right places, with the right people. And the outcome is going to be great. It's going to be important. But that process is where we're going to learn so much about how we can maybe change things up in the future of, these are actually the seeds I need to put here now. And I'm metaphorically speaking, obviously, but I just think that's fantastic. I want to hear a little bit more about like how you invest in yourself and how you're pouring into other people. And we can tackle those one at a time. So maybe just share a little bit about like how you got into this position, because, where you started out is dramatically different than where you've ended up. And maybe just dive a little bit further into the process of how you decided what steps you needed to take when, and, what were the driving factors behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 43 years old today as we're recording this podcast.
Happy birthday.
Well, it's not today.
Oh.
But I put in 40, I've got 43 years on the face of the planet. And so I've gone through a few different versions of Christie. And I mean, although sometimes those seasons felt really difficult, and I took really good notes so that I could share those things, not just with my children, but I could also look back on them and learn to cherish those moments and those crossroads that I found myself in. And because a long, long time ago, I chose to look at some of those challenges in my life that I was dealing with, or those questioning moments and intersection moments in my life. I chose to really celebrate those in weird ways, or what those people around me that were supporting me through that felt was really odd in those moments. I'm really glad I did that, because it's really laid like this emphasis on how you approach those intersection moments. So, and I'll kind of share what that means, because my journey didn't, I didn't set out on my professional journey to become an agronomist or a mentor, or a social media person, whatever you want to call that. I was 100% sure. In fact, I had a scholarship to go to school for pre-pharmacy. I wanted to be a pharmacologist. I was fascinated by science, really, really obsessed with physiology, biology, absolutely loved it. I was also really interested in the fact that there was a full-fledged career that allowed us to study the way things influence the human body. And I was just obsessed. Anyway, through my high school, that was my path. I wanted to be a pharmacist. I was going to Ferris State. That was that was everything to me. And during my senior year, I had a series of toxic relationships, as most young people do. And the way that I chose to deal with those or to handle those was to say yes to some and no to others. And that led me away from my path in pharmacy. And I was really disappointed, and I really grieved that for a little while. And it also kind of laid some seeds of resentment, feeling like I gave this up for you, kind of thing. And that was really short-sighted in the moment, but it was very human. And, that's not something I talk about a great deal, but I think it's important to recognize the grieving process of saying no to something that you had built in your mind for yourself. And all of a sudden saying, this was everything that I was working towards, and had become a place where I started to take my self-worth and in valuing who I was as an intelligent human being, with a really good head on my shoulders and a lot of potential sitting in front of me as a 18, 19-year-old woman. And so because I made a few different decisions in my life, I also started my family very young, comparatively speaking. I had my first child when I was 20, my second when I was 21, and my third when I was 23. And being a young mom, that presents all kinds of different challenges in that season of life, when my peers were going to full-time college, when my peers were still having Thursday night bar nights and things like that. I was home taking care of babies. And so that wasn't something that I really longed for. That social side of that season of my life wasn't something that I longed for, I missed. But what I did long for and miss was the purpose that I felt in, choosing or wanting to go down this path of pharmacy. I had a lot of purpose there. I had a lot of drive there. It helped me make good decisions with everything I did, my time management and everything. And when I lost that, I kind of lost myself in the mix, right? Like, oh my gosh, if I'm not going to be a pharmacologist, what am I doing any of this for? And an opportunity had presented itself for me to take on a role interning for a business, a corporation, and but it required me to go to college for business. And I thought, what do I have to lose in this? This fits my life right now. I don't know a ton about business, but I can I think I could handle this. So I started taking classes. I immediately jumped into this organization, and they were wonderful to me, and they celebrated the things that I brought to the table. Me thinking that my self-worth and my value to anybody was going to be related to chemistry and calculus and biophysics, suddenly opened my eyes to the fact that none of that actually was who I was. It was my drive. It was my mindset. It was my, I can do this attitude. And those intersections, like I referenced earlier, right? Like, I just remember having that moment thinking, I have nothing to lose. I can only gain from this. And I am 21 years old or 20 years old here. If this doesn't work out, this doesn't mean I have to be here forever. And so I walked into that experience, into accounting classes, into business management classes, into business law classes, going, most of my background up until this point is like in high level biology and, physics and stuff. Who knew, anyway, so I just applied the problem solving skills that I learned in how to solve equations in chemistry and calculus, and, applied that to business problems. And what I started out in the organization being like a glorified administrative assistant turned into a project coordinator and somebody that had the ability to tackle things on my own and get a team around me that we could tackle projects. And that was a very rewarding season of my life. And going through college classes, as well as like this vocational on the job training, I realized I am so much more than a pharmacy school dropout. I didn't drop out, but I felt that way. That's how I felt when I looked in the mirror for a little while there, and realizing that I had a lot more to offer, and the ability to translate technical information into tidbits that the public could understand was kind of my superpower. And all I can do is just give glory to God for giving me that gift. Because I've worked with so many people that are on like either the highly technical side or very good at sales and don't get the technical components. It's so rare to find people that have that. So I'm just convinced that that is less of a learned trait and that is more of a gift. And I'm just going to give God the glory for that, because, where did it come from? I don't know. But that piece right there has become like my cornerstone in every other job that I've ever had. I tried my hat at doing some entrepreneur home-based businesses because I had little children. I wanted to spend more time with them. That wasn't suiting my fancy, although it met a need. Again, just being grateful for those seasons and recognizing I'm really good at this, but is this what I'm really great at? This is fulfilling a need for our family right now, and I'm willing to do this in this moment, but I know that there's something better for me that's better suited for me. And in the process of, college and working for different companies over the years, I got connected with a corporation that builds marketing plans for businesses that don't have a marketing department for themselves. And when I was with this organization, and this is pre-social media, don't forget I'm 43 years old, so I did a good stint of my professional development before social media. And so when I learned that I had the ability to communicate with people and understanding what their needs were, sort of this sales side of me started really developing. And that was something that, again, was really, it was unexpected to me, but yet my parents and, people that loved me and knew me well were like, oh yeah, Christie, she could sell any, whatever, she could sell anything to anybody, blah, blah, blah. And it was just because I enjoyed communicating with people and understanding what their needs were. And so this is kind of, up until this point, I basically had college and vocational training through a huge global corporation that I was working for at the time. And I realized I have entered into a new season. My children were entering into school. I had more time to work on myself, develop my skill set. And I enjoyed the sales piece. I also I was really empowered by the way that more successful I was with sales, the more money I could make. And I know that money doesn't mean everything, but it became an interesting psychological driver for me, knowing that I was in control, even though I was working for somebody else. I was in control of my success. And that was absolutely addictive to me. And that may not be true of everybody. In fact, most people I know that are even have the word sales in their credentials or in their title don't consider themselves salespeople. I never considered myself a salesperson. There seems something like dirty, and I don't know, just the connotation had some nuance to it. Is that really, I don't want to be a salesperson. What I realized was really great salespeople were really good communicators, really good listeners. And if I partner with the right company, I could maybe tap into places in my heart that had gone dark for lack of motion from a previous point in my life when I thought I was going to be a pharmacologist, and to be able to use some of my science background. And so kind of, moving through my 20s in that era, I had a few more employers through that season of life. I had a major life-changing event, separating and divorcing from my children's father. And that was just a really interesting season of life where it was up to me to be the provider. It was up to me to now, I didn't have another income in the household to be able to say, oh, I want to go chase my passions, and I really had to get honest with myself and say, Christie, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You are it. You are the sole, not only provider for these children, but you are an example for your children to know how to handle adversity. and to know what to do when things get tough. And so, that was really a pivotal moment in my life. I found myself in front of a couple of folks I knew of in the community that were looking for somebody to come in and basically be their business manager. I had the resume to be able to do that. I went in and interviewed with those folks and I said, listen, you're not going to believe this, but you're hiring me to basically run your office and, be your office manager, that type of thing. And I can totally do that. I have the resume to do it. I have the years experience. I have the skill set. I do. But I'll be honest with you. If you teach me how to sell what you're selling, I will not only make you more money, but I will probably work for you for the rest of my life. And they were floored. And the people I was interviewing with were just like, how could you even say that? I said, I don't know. I just really am interested. I've never worked in the agricultural space, but the research that I've been doing about the clients you're serving and the way that your business model is here, I'm fascinated by it. I have this, secret nerdy side of me that really understands physics and biology and chemistry really well. I feel like there might be some ways that this could cross. So I'm just putting it out there. I think I'd be great for this position. But I think there's a future here that maybe neither of us really expected walking into this. They were floored. They offered me the position. I worked for them for about 9 months. And after just going through my first planting season and custom application season for this ag retail, I realized that I could do what they were doing. And I just needed a little bit of mentorship. So when we talk about like professional development, Kacee, I know that that's a big part of this. I got vocational training to learn how to communicate in the business world. Yes, I had business communications classes and I had speech classes. Like I had all those things. That didn't really prepare me for the way to communicate in the real world. I feel like, even that college experience really was lacking. And without that workplace experience that I was carrying simultaneously with my schooling, I don't think I would be the communicator that I am today or be able to have conversations with folks and to get to the bottom of stuff like I can. And so really, it was that professional development that was ongoing on my daily through my 20s to develop my business acumen. But when I started working for the ag retail, it was a whole different ballgame. Like I hadn't thought about plant physiology. I hadn't thought about soil physics. I hadn't thought about, like water cycles in 10 plus years. Like I said, that part of my warehouse had gone dark for lack of movement, right? Like it was time to blow the dust off, revitalize, my energy for that technical side of things. But I also, I had a completely different professional development experience here because I didn't know what I was doing was learning how to be an agronomist. I didn't have a term for it. I didn't know what the word even meant. I'd never even heard of it before. I didn't have FFA at my school, didn't have 4-H in my township or my area, right? Like that wasn't my background. That wasn't my upbringing. Both sides of my families were farmers, but my dad was an engineer and my mother was a homemaker. And so that wasn't my path or my brother's path. And so I was getting exposed to a completely new way to have business conversations, identify needs, learn how good recommendations of good quality products were going to impact my client, which was that farmer. And it required a whole different type of professional development. So, that basically brings you up to the point where I'm about 28, 29 years old and essentially starting a new career in a new field. And I didn't know it at the moment, but I was about to enter into the most rewarding, the most fulfilling, and the most challenging season of my life that I would ever experience up until that point.
I have chills, Christie, like straight chills. And I know you well enough to know like the sound in your voice is passion and hurt and growth and all the things at the same time, because that's real life. And that is exactly what I want people to share on this podcast, because when you're trying to find yourself, it can be so painful, but it can be so rewarding at the same time. And so I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because I know how vulnerable that is. But I think that that's what we miss in the agriculture industry, is that, and especially on social media too, right? Even watching farms on social media, we assume that everyone just got really lucky, or they had people who kind of paved the way for them, but they don't show some of those seasons where it was a little darker than they want to let on. And something I can really resonate with is when you talked about, like, here's where I was way back in the day. And then I ended up slowly pushing some really important parts of me into the back corner of this warehouse, because I thought I needed to do this, or I thought I needed to go here, or this is what worked for me and my family. And so I had to prioritize that. And then you started kind of slowly walking back towards that back end of the warehouse again and uncovering Christie. And I think that that is just, whew, that's good stuff. And I think there's a lot of people who can relate to that. And I think that's why I get so geeked out with the working genius model, is because there's a lot of people, especially within agriculture, that have a passion, which essentially translates to, there are a lot of things that get us excited and bring us energy. And that's what wakes us up and keeps us going and gives us hope. But sometimes we have to push that aside because stuff's got to get done first. Or I have to prioritize somebody else's dream or somebody else's priorities before my own. And I know a lot of people who are listening to this podcast have families that they're trying to take care of and put first. And again, that's why I love the working genius so much, is it's because it puts a name and a language around why you feel burnt out, or why you feel lost, or why you're feeling like you're just craving something more, but you're not really sure how to go about it. And that's what that model does. But if we could just take a second to go back to the part where you were talking about communicating, I thought that was fascinating, because there's a book by John Maxwell, which is a huge mentor of mine, that is called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And that's a big deal in the agriculture industry as well. Is like, we could talk all day long, but until you truly connect with people, you're not really going to make as much as an impact as you would like. And I know that you meant connection when you said communication. And that's something that I felt with you the very first moment that we met, is you were arms wide open with me. And I felt so comfortable around you. And I felt like, wow, this is someone who truly cares, and someone who's truly passionate about educating other people and being really real and honest and vulnerable with their journey, because you want to be able to help others with that too. And I see that in your agronomy services. I see that in you as a person. And you mentioned having mentors as well. Would you want to elaborate a little bit more on like how impactful that was for you, and how you found those mentors, and some of the biggest takeaways that you had of like why that was a valuable investment, is kind of like assigning mentors to yourself?
Yeah, so I think I'll talk about, I kind of shared with you how I got to the ag industry. And so I'll talk about the mentors and their role in my life for that season, because in each of these iterations of Christie, I have had different needs. And even when I'm talking, in front of a room full of farmers, and I talk about the way that we feed our crops, right? I use the analogy. I say, you wouldn't feed a Big Mac to a baby the same way you're not going to feed a baby bottle to a teenager. It is not the right food for the right season of life. And so I think that's important for all of us to wrap our heads around, because now that we are in this modern age and we are in the social media world, I feel like every other person on social media that I see or on TikTok is like, I mentor, I'm a mentor, I'm a sales mentor, I'm a marketing mentor, I have whatever. And I think that, first of all, I commend every person that puts themselves out there in that capacity. But I also caution you as a consumer of, what's out there, this information, to understand what season you're currently in, and take inventory of where you're at, because finding the right mentor in the right season is as critical as getting the right nutrition at the right season of your life. So, the Big Mac to a teenager versus that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there was no way that the mentors that served me in my 30s were the right people to have served me in my 20s. Similarly, because even what I was doing with my life and raising my children as having young children, that was really critical for me. I had a couple of really important mentors that fed me in different ways. One fed me in this spiritual context where they were encouraging me to find a deeper faith in the moment and to find a higher power and deeper source of a deeper well than what I had been drinking from up until that point in my life. And recognizing that I am a part of a whole bigger thing, right? And, not to get too like religious on that side of things, but that was really foundational for me. And I'm super glad I had that. And it wasn't just somebody that kept pointing me to Bible studies and whatever. It was actually in finding a mom's group because I was hustling so hard. I was running ragged, trying to make ends meet and trying to be the provider that my family needed me to be in that season, while also still having some shred of semblance as a woman and as a mom, and trying to figure all of that out. And so I joined a group of mothers. We all basically had kids from like infancy to about 7 or 8 years old. And we started meeting on a regular basis and started realizing we had similar needs. And so that was really important for me to recognize that I could go and find a professional mentor that could teach me all the business things. But until I found a respite there in that group, I eventually became a leader of that group, and realizing that I wanted to serve moms in the way that I needed to be served, or the things that I was desperately needing so much, recognizing that there was these gaps in moms that are building a career and are entrepreneurs or are employees that have demanding schedules. How do we balance that? How do we be the partner that we need to be, and that was really, really critical. So that season of my life, that was a huge part of the mentorship. I found some really incredibly strong women that were able to come beside me and tell me the truth. I think that's something that we also get sucked into when we are seeking out a mentor. We're seeking out somebody that we vibe with or whatever. And a lot of times that means we vibe with them because they don't challenge us enough. And some of the reasoning for needing a mentor is because you need to grow. You're on a path that you don't have the full manual for. And these are people that can come and help provide you with strategies, support, and engagement to help you level up and on a continual basis, right? There's a reason why we age. There's a reason why we enter into different seasons. Like, there's a physiological reason, right? We go through this progression. There is a destination at the end of our humanity. Eventually we die and become dust of the earth, and that's it. But in the meantime, we have the opportunity to make impact here. And without being mentored and being challenged, we may never reach our potential and impact. For some people, that's fine. Some people have no desire to impact more than what they're currently doing today. But I assure you, every single one of us has sat down at the end of a season, or as a season is closing, and grieving the season. Whether it be, the school season has come to an end. Now my kids are home for the summer. What am I going to do? I feel overwhelmed, right? Like that is a response, and there are mentors that can help you with those types of things. Also, like, I am feeling lost and alone. Like, I don't know if I want to do this for my career anymore. Like, how do I even sort this out without, who am I going to talk to, right? Like, finding a mentor that can help you sort out your feelings and help you to find out, why don't you feel fulfilled in that anymore? Or maybe there is opportunities here. You just didn't know where to look in this organization where you're currently at, or in this situation you're currently at. Another really critical mentor that I had in that season of my life was, I interned under this gal many, many years ago. And she taught me some really important things about dressing for success. I mean, how silly does this sound? But she gave me some really important things that even still to this day, I find myself saying, thanks, Lisa, because I show up to a speaking engagement in a blazer. And even though I feel like I might be overdressed, I never feel underdressed. And that helps with my confidence in the situation, right? Maybe I don't even know my audience sometimes, and I'm here to present something. And, where that translates even until today, she taught me about finishing jobs. I've always been a person that'll, do a job at level 100 to about 85% completion. And then I reach that last stretch, right? I round third base on the project and I start to get overwhelmed and I start to second guess myself and I start to worry, am I even the right leader for this project? And blah, 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 blah. Lisa taught me something really important about that. She said, you're not allowed to assess whether or not you're the right person for that project unless you self-nominated. If somebody's appointed you to that project, it's for a reason, and you need to trust their judgment. And that was something that I struggled with because it was partially a self-worth issue, right? And she helped me work through that. I had a couple of project appointments that she's really pivotal at helping me understand, why was I the person for this? This is not the skill set I have. This is not I don't think I'm good at this. This isn't even an area of the business that I've had experience with. And she reminded me all the time. She said, Christie, you know how to talk to people. You know how to build a team. You know how to teach. That's why you're there. You're going to bring people onto this project that can help you execute and deliver, but you are the one. You are the glue here. And I never saw myself that way. And it wasn't until 3 or 4 project appointments where I immediately hit third base on these projects and started second guessing everything. She's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You've been appointed to this because of this. Trust their judgment. Trust their judgment, and will help you to develop the confidence you need to lead these projects on your own without hitting the third base, like questioning yourself. And that was really important to just help me with that, with my self-confidence during that period of my life. Because in the background of my life, I had a lot of things really struggling. I was struggling financially. I was struggling in my marriage. I was struggling to be the mom of 3 children under 3 years old. Like I was struggle bus city, and I didn't have time. I had spent 2.5 hours of every single day commuting. And so my ability to put a meal on the table, like my mom always did, made me feel worthless. Like I couldn't do it. I didn't have the time to do it. I was, not sleeping enough, because after my kids went to bed is when I took care of my home and watered my flowers and did all the things that I found myself, kind of slightly unraveling in the background and letting that translate into my value and my worth in my work. And that mentor in that season of my life was really pivotal, and she was relentless with our meetings. And it was every other Thursday we would have lunch together. There's a really cute cafe 2.5 blocks. So we got almost a full lunch period together. And she was relentless with, how am I succeeding? And where do I feel I am struggling? And she did not care the details. She has no interest whether this project finishes or doesn't. She doesn't care anything about those details. All she cared about was that I was walking in full confidence of my own abilities in that moment. And so a lot of our conversation revolved around, why am I feeling like this way? Why am I struggling in these ways? And so I really attribute a lot of my success in that season of my life to the way that she mentored me in that regard. And even though I didn't work with her anymore, she stayed in my life because she and I clicked. We had a rapport, and she could tell me the truth and I could accept that from her because it came from a place of love, never of malice or jealousy. And that's something that I thought was really powerful, right? She wanted me to be more successful than her, the same way a parent wants their own children to be more successful than they are. And so, those are 2 examples of different types of mentorship in my life that kept me alive. I mean, I don't even know another way to describe it, but literally saved my life in so many ways. But it took me a while to reach out for help and realize that I can't do this on my own. Because I was an overachiever student, I had a really, clear pathway for myself. It wasn't until everything in my life trajectory changed, and now all of a sudden, the identity that I saw myself having wasn't my reality. I didn't really know how to cope very well. So those were two different types of mentorship that fed me and poured into me really powerfully during that season. When I entered into the ag industry, I needed a completely different type of mentor. By that time, I had built a really good business acumen. I had built, developed my skill set of communicating and, like you said, connecting and being able to translate technical things into relatable things. And so I kind of used those skill sets to go out and seek mentors. And so I set out on a journey to find people that were willing to share with me openly. I found, like, one of my screens that I have, screening process to find that mentor for me, is when I was learning to be an agronomist, was how much they're willing to share. Were they protecting something because they saw me as a threat? That was a really good filter. And I learned a long time ago, early on, that when I started asking questions, that because I understood soil physics or I understood plant physiology, I had some like little thing that they didn't. They may have perceived that as a threat and they immediately shut down. And so that helped me to recognize, you're not a great mentor for me because you're not willing to challenge me, or you are jealous of me. And so you maybe will be sabotaging me down the road. However, I want to build a relationship with you because we can grow together. Right. And so I've made some really incredible friends in this business. I've made some really incredible peer mentors in this business now. But probably, being willing to like reach out and say, this is what I think I need, or I'm really fascinated. I heard you speak at this, I just started, like, I would just randomly cold email people and say, I heard you speak at this, weed diagnostic day. I was really fascinated by that. I have some questions about this, this, and this. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me? I never once in years of I still do that to this day, have had somebody tell me no. Never. Never. It is the most empowering thing to be able to share that with your audience. I think sometimes we don't ask for help because we think the answer is no. And when the answer, in my experience, especially in this like technical development, segment of my career, these educators, these, weed scientists, the water dynamics engineers, they always respond. They're like, I'm so glad you asked that question. We wish more people had questions like that so that we knew how to serve you better. I'm like, wow, you just want to freely share this with me? That's incredible. That's actually what motivates me to share what I've learned with others so freely. Because this preconceived idea that the answer was going to be no would prevent me from asking really great questions, and maybe prevent them from being able to showcase their talents in different ways, or share pieces of information that could help farmers do something more efficiently, or whatever that might be, and helping us kind of like learn as we go. We're growing together, kind of thing. So my mentors in this season of my life, and I still have them to this day, look very, very different than what they used to, right? I no longer second guess myself if I'm a good project manager because I've had enough experience doing it. But I do know that there's no way I could know everything. And I'm in a constant state of growth. And so even the agronomy applications that I'm discussing out in the field apply to my life, right? Like it's pointless to apply certain things at certain stages because that's not what the plant needs. I need to match the application with what the plant needs in that moment. And that's true of mentors, right? It's silly for us to find a mentor that meets one, small little silo of our life. And that's in the past now. Why are we still there, right? It's not that mentor isn't significant for you, but that you're in a new season and you need to be challenged differently. And, sometimes it's mindset and sometimes it's technical thing, whatever that might be. And sometimes it is like having a friend that you can have on your back porch and build a more intimate friendship with, and not just the professional development side too, because you're like I said earlier, I'm also a mom. I'm also a wife. I'm an empty nester. Like I'm in a new season of my life right now and on the personal side of things. And although it's very empowering to have like all this extra time to be able to pour into my career, now I'm learning, like, I say yes to everything. that's something I need to keep working on, right? I'm learning. I'm a growth in progress. We keep hitting these like moments where you find that you might be ready for something new, and you have to be willing to, raise your hand or reach out or just send that email and say, or that DM and say, I follow you on Instagram. I know you probably get this a lot, but you really inspired me with X, Y, and Z. Have you ever thought about this, or would you be willing to have a conversation? Because they may have a mentor that fits what you need right now. They may be the mentor that you were looking for. You just don't know it. And on the flip side, you may be the blessing that they needed to encourage them to keep going. So there's a lot of things that kind of play into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many things that I want to go back and touch on, but I think to sum up my, I don't even know where to go. Anyway, the thing that you said about, having different mentors in different seasons is so powerful, because we are always evolving, and our resources and our circle of influence and our mentors should evolve with that. I think that's so powerful. I mean, that is exactly why I say AgriMinds is focused on personal and professional development, because they are hand in hand. You cannot work on one and it not affect the other in some way, shape, or form. Right. They absolutely go hand in hand. And I love that you are so aware of like, okay, this mentor does not quite make sense for me anymore. I've kind of not grown out of the mentor, but they serve the purpose. And that, I don't want that to come across as like you use them or anything, because that's not what I mean. But I think that it's just okay to say, okay, this is what leveling up looks like. And with a new level in any game comes a new challenge, a new set of characters, and a new end goal. And you keep trying that level until you get it, and then you move on, and the same thing goes, right? And I love your agronomy analogies as we go too. I think that is so cool. I love that so much. Christie, you are a wealth of knowledge. And I mean, that's exactly what happened with you and I, is I followed you on social media for a long time, and I was going to be up in Michigan, and so many people had said, you've got to connect with her. Like, you have got to meet her in person. And I literally like stalked you for a hot minute up in Michigan, and like I found you at an event and like came up to you afterwards. And I'm like, hi, I have to meet you. Pay attention to me. Let's be friends. I literally did, didn't I? And I was like, you're gonna be my friend. But I mean, and you didn't turn me away, and you've taught me professionally about so many things, about different crops, about different business conversations, but you also helped me in my personal life too. I mean, we've had a lot of really deep personal conversations, and they go hand in hand. And I think that's really important for people to understand, especially within the agriculture industry, is it's so intertwined. And I just, again, thank you so much for being so vulnerable with that. I know we're running a little bit out of time, but could you just kind of catch us up to date on like where you're at today? I mean, what does personal and professional development look like for you now? And how are you applying that with your conversations with the people that you mentor?
Yeah, so my professional development today actually looks very different than it did when I was on the early stages of my agronomy. And I think it's partially because I have found once I feel like I've reached a point of mastery of a certain level, I'm a person that gets restless. And because I've always loved the sales aspect, like I love just discussing a topic with a farmer, understanding what their needs are, and then helping them find solutions. And so I may not sell them a product, but I am helping them discover a solution. So sales for me looks extremely different. It's more like the needs identification piece of that I think has become so important to me. And it's helped me to develop this Crop Scout Christie consulting side of me, the entrepreneur within me that's always been there within me, is really being fed right now through taking these pieces and understanding what problems farmers are facing and what are the questions why are they questioning rye? Like, where did this come from for you? Why are all of a sudden in 72 years of your farm, are you wanting to do cover crops now? And, so I'll just use that as an example. And so now this conversation comes, well, I've heard something about carbon credits, and I've heard that this is good for the soil, and we're doing things different than we used to when dad and, and uncle ran the farm, and, we got to keep up with the times, and all this equipment's so high tech. Why is my farm not high tech, right? Like, okay, so helping them to like identify why they're asking the questions, I find myself asking myself the same questions. Why am I so interested in their thought process? Why am I doing this? And in discovering that, I have sought out mentors that can help me bring solutions to my clients better. And so my mentors in this season of my life are soil health experts and researchers, soil scientists, and carbon experts. Building relationships in the agronomy space has been really important for me over these years to keep leveling myself up. And even more so today, as we get more down the rabbit hole of, say soil health, for example, like that's such a buzzword right now. How do we implement it? I want to be able to help farmers do that. I want to be a solution provider. I want to be a resource, not just a source of product, but a resource of information, not a Walmart, but a library. And I have found that this is feeding a part of my soul that I started recognizing when I was in my 20s and doing project management and doing, going through college and raising my children and being a part of this, mothers of preschoolers, and being a part of these different, things that I've done over the years. That's how I'm built. I am built to be a resource. That's why I can communicate. And the more that I embrace those gifts, the more I embrace those things and say yes to those opportunities, the less I have to look for mentors. They naturally are in my circle. It's just, I cannot describe it, but the more awareness that I have of the things that I'm not just good at, but great at, naturally, I recognize those things in other people. And I introduce myself and say, hey, you really, really inspired me. I know you were talking about, rotational grazing on a 12-way cover crop in Oklahoma, but the way that you communicated and connected pierced my heart. And I'm built like that. And I want to build a relationship with you. And so people like that always say yes, because they see the value. There's no way that person that I'm referring to could speak to everybody. There's no way. He has 2 feet. He's just one person, right? And so we're speeding the light and speeding the message by lifting each other up and helping each other become better. And so I'm like the new kid on the block in this, in this group. And it's been incredible how open people are willing to mentor me, because they know that my interest in helping people and becoming a resource of not just facts, but also in troubleshooting and in sorting out some of the more sensitive sides of problem solving on the farm, right? When a farm recognizes that they're vulnerable in some way, there's a lot of pride involved, and people protect things that they hold on to those things, even though they might be wrong or not producing the outcomes they wanted. And so when I present a solution, I have to learn how to do that in a tactful and respectful way, or help them to understand how that solution could solve lots of different issues on that farm. And so I have found that my mentors in this season of my life have been coming to me more organically, I guess you could say. I've had to do much less seeking for the right person than I ever have in my life. And I'm very grateful for that. And I think it also helps that my husband is in the same industry, and he challenges me in a different way. And so in some regards, my husband has served as a mentor to me in many different aspects of my agronomy journey. And that's been really, really powerful. And the way that I communicate these things that I learned to the folks that look at me as a mentor has been super rewarding for me. Like I said, back in my, when my babies were little and back when I was struggling to make ends meet, like I recognized I want to help. I want to help in the way that I needed the most help. And so for me in this season of my life, I have this huge heart for young women in agriculture that are making their way. I got my start in a field where there's very few female faces. I was mentored by a handful of women agronomists. And when I say a handful, I'm talking like 3 that I knew that were willing to share with me and to give me a heads up on things and, coach me along the way. And especially when I was struggling, like, why won't they listen to me? Like, why won't they say yes to me? Why won't they give me an appointment on the farm? Or when they do, they, whatever. Like I got a lot of help from other more seasoned female agronomists. But I also got a lot of help from a couple of my farmer mentors that were willing to just say, Christie, you're smart. Scares people. You need to learn how to tactfully convey that information without making that farmer feel like a dummy, or about making that person sitting across from you feel less, because you're smart and you're well-spoken. And that comes across really, like you can be a lot. I know that. I've always known that. That's something that has vexed me forever. I was a know-it-all when I was young, and translating that into like different seasons of my life. Yeah. Some of the mistakes I've made is because I'm like, well, why are you doing that? Instead of, taking that more tactful approach. So fine-tuning my communication skills and my tactfulness has helped me gain friendships on the farmer side of the table to say, maybe if you phrased it like this, maybe you'll, have more whatever. And so that's been a tremendous mentorship, in my opinion. And it's something that I've been able to translate into a tool that I'm creating for young women in agriculture. There's more female faces in ag today, and like the agronomy and crop and soils, than there ever has been in the history. It's almost 50-50 male and female now, which is unheard of. Like at Michigan State, our crop and soil census is 50-50 male and female. It's unbelievable. And it's exciting. But why aren't women staying in our industry? Why are they only sticking around for 1 or 2 years and then they either leave the ag industry altogether or they're constantly moving jobs? Why is that? I want to get to the bottom of that. I want to help come alongside these women and mentor them in the ways that I was mentored and poured into, so that they stick around and sort out how to continually grow in the face of adversity, and how to celebrate intersections instead of running away from them and feeling like a failure. So, those are kind of both sides, right? The mentors that are speaking into me, and then what's building in my heart to speak to others.
Yeah, that's powerful. And something that I love to do is providing resources for people. And you talked about, when you had a need, it was just like, oh, somehow the right people were around me. And there's this thing called the proximity principle that Ken Coleman talks about a lot. He's got a podcast and there's a book, but it's something that's been really influential on me. Of, if I want to be this certain type of person, I need to surround myself with those type of people. And so it's called the proximity principle. I'll put a link in the show notes of the book and the podcast about it, but it's really powerful. And then the second thing is, like you said, like just reach out to people. And that is a huge fear. 7 out of 10 people have a fear of networking. And it's a very real thing that a lot of people struggle with. And so I put together a couple-page worksheet on how to network. And so I'll put that in the show notes as well. It's a free resource that you can download. And I still use it to this day. Anytime like I'm getting ready to go to an event, instead of me like, hi, I'm Kacee, or like me completely forgetting my name at times, like I can have some pre-scripted questions that I just practice all the time. And this worksheet is super helpful for people who have a hard time, one, being intentional with their conversations, but two, actually trying to connect with other people. And so this framework's going to help people be really intentional and feel confident when they have those conversations. And so I love sharing resources like that with people. Are there any other resources that you would want to recommend to anybody off the top of your head? I know I totally put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I've had, Kacee, I've been really impressed with the resources that you've been creating, and I'm really excited for the launch of your, AgriMinds group that you have coming. And, people listening to this podcast may happen after that launch, but I just really encourage folks to dig into the resources that you're creating. And I think it's extra powerful because I feel like you have entered into an awesome season of your life where you are embracing your superpowers, and that is elevating the way that you're leading others. And I just think it's really powerful. So I'm gonna encourage people to check out what you're doing with not just the AgriMinds podcast, but with these AgriMinds mastermind that you have coming up. And because I'm sure that you'll have future cohorts. And I think that's really, really important. Thanks for just working hard, Kacee, because I'm really proud of you. Actually, I'm really, really proud of you.
Well, thank you for saying that. I've had great people in my life that have mentored me and encouraged me, and I don't think I would be as confident or willing to be risky had I not had people in my corner. And I think that's what's powerful, is finding the place that works for you, finding the group of people, finding the right program, finding the right organization, finding the right tools and resources that work for you in this particular season of life. And it's not going to look the same for everyone. So just doing the work to learn who you are and what you're after is my very first piece of advice, is because if you don't know what you want, no one can help you make it happen. And so the very first step is to just identify that. And I mean, that's exactly what AgriMinds is going to do, is help people uncover, like, why are you feeling the way that you're feeling? Okay, well, let's do something about it. And so I just appreciate your kind words on that. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I am so thankful that you took time out of your day on Wednesday of all days to spend it with me. If people want to follow along with you on social media, or connect with you, or utilize some of your services, where can they find you?
So I'm on all the social media platforms at Crop Scout Christie. That's CHRISTIE. I'm also on LinkedIn. I just share my journey there. That's basically what you see on my social media platforms. Christie Apple on Facebook. I got bounced off of social media last fall for some weird reason, and so I've had to basically recreate my followings on the social media platforms. But that's basically where you're going to see the nuts and bolts of who Crop Scout Christie is. And feel free to contact me anytime. I answer all my own DMs. This is a one gal agronomist operation here. So if you ever have a question, whether it's agronomy related or mindset related, happy to support. And thank you so much for having me on. And I can't wait to see you just continue to thrive, Kacee.